When my daughter-in-law threw a glass of wine in my face, I didn't just see betrayal. I saw the end of the illusion of family harmony. She saw the house as her trophy, but I, betrayed by my son and his wife, sold it in weeks. I took everything and never looked back. Before we continue, please subscribe to William's Revenge Stories and write in the comments what time it is where you are right now. And now, more than ever, we must stay united. I nodded, feeling a strange peace. We had survived this. Let's go inside, I suggested. Richard must be waiting for dinner. We walked hand in hand toward the house, our house. The future was uncertain, but as long as we had each other, we could face any challenge. And so, the man who had faked a collapse one morning to discover a terrible truth now walked firmly into a new chapter of his life. A chapter where a son's betrayal would hurt like an open wound, but where the certainty of having acted with dignity and justice would also shine. Because in the end, the only thing that really matters is being able to look in the mirror and recognize a person who defended what was right, who protected those he loved, and who never gave in to injustice, even when it came from his own blood. And that, more than any fortune or property, is the true legacy I hope to leave in this world. I adjusted my tie and the reflection of the car window before walking to the front door, checking that the knot was centered. The leather folder with documents felt heavy under my arm, and the velvet jewelry box pressed against my chest through my jacket pocket. Everything had to be perfect for this moment. I had rehearsed my speech on the drive from my house, imagining Daniel's face when I announced what I had decided. He looked thinner than last month, his shoulders slumped. "Thanks for coming." "Of course I came." I set the folder on the side table, keeping the jewelry box in my pocket for now. "This is important." We sat down. Valerie poured wine into crystal glasses I had never bought, filling hers almost to the brim. Daniel's hands fidgeted with his napkin, folding and refolding the corner. The first course appeared. Had she hired someone to cook? I realized, seeing the professional plating, more expenses. I waited until she finished serving. The moment felt ceremonial, significant. I retrieved the folder and placed it carefully on the table between us, smoothing the leather with my palm. Daniel, Valerie. I wanted tonight to be special. I opened the folder, revealing the property deed on top, my grandfather's signature still visible in faded blue ink at the bottom. This house has been in the family for 3 generations. My grandfather bought it in 1960, when this neighborhood was still being developed. He paid $12,000 for it. Valerie leaned forward, her eyes fixed on the papers. He passed it to my parents, who lived here for 40 years. They passed it to me. And now, I paused, wanting the words to have the proper weight. Now I am ready to pass it to you, Daniel. Next week I have an appointment with the notary to make the transfer official. The house will be yours. Finally, Valerie's voice cracked across the table like a whip. Do you know how long we've been waiting? 3 years, Arthur. 3 years of our lives in limbo. I blinked, confused. Waiting? Valerie, I don't understand. I'm giving you the house to live in, to build your family. Live in it? She laughed, a sharp, shrill sound. We don't want to live here. We want what's ours. I have buyers lined up, $2.1 million. We could finally start our real life. Move to a better neighborhood. But you keep dragging your feet with your sentimental garbage about family traditions. The room tilted slightly. Buyers? You want to sell it? Of course we want to sell it. That's the whole point. She was standing now, her chair scraping backward. What did you think? That we were going to waste our best years in this dated house, in your dated neighborhood, playing happy family? We need that money, Arthur. We've earned it by putting up with your endless delays and your control. I am not trying to control anyone. I kept my voice level, the way I had learned to in court when proceedings got heated. The house was meant to be a home, for family, for generations. We don't care about your generations. Her hand slammed the table, making the crystal vibrate. I already found buyers who will pay $2.1 million. That's our ticket out. Our chance to build something real. But you pathetic, manipulative old man, you think you can hold us hostage with your money? Daniel was staring at his plate. His knuckles had turned white around the napkin. Daniel? I turned to my son, searching his face for some recognition. You knew about this? About selling? He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. His eyes stayed fixed downward. Of course he knew. Valerie grabbed her wine glass. He's my husband. But he's too weak to stand up to you. Too afraid to disappoint Daddy. Well, I'm not afraid. This is our house. We've earned it. The wine hit my face, cold and sharp, the red liquid splashing my vision. It soaked my white shirt. It dripped from my chin onto the papers I had laid out so carefully on the table. The documents darkened at the edges, blooming with red stains. Pathetic old man, Valerie hissed. You think you can control us with your money? This is our house. We've earned it. I stood up slowly. Wine dripped from my collar, pooling on my shirt. My hands moved deliberately. I set down my napkin. I gathered the wine-stained documents and put them back in the folder. The velvet jewelry box remained in my pocket, undelivered. Daniel had not moved, had not spoken, had not looked at me once. I walked to the door. Behind me, Valerie's voice rose again. See? I told you your father never respected us. I told you he would never let us go. The front door clicked shut behind me. I walked to my car. Every step measured. My hand trembled when I reached for the door handle. The first crack in my control. I gripped it tighter until the shaking stopped. Inside the car, I adjusted the rearview mirror. The wine-stained collar of my shirt reflected back at me, dark and damning. I sat in that driveway for several minutes before starting the engine. The drive to my apartment in the city usually took 15 minutes. That night I missed my exit, trapped in some blank space between thinking and not thinking. A horn blared behind me when I corrected too slowly. My knuckles ached from gripping the steering wheel. At every red light, I looked at the wine stain spreading across my chest. Dark and sticky. My condo building rose against the night sky, modest compared to the Spanish villa. I had moved here 3 years ago after I retired, wanting something simple, manageable, 2 bedrooms, a balcony overlooking the ocean. Rental furniture I had never bothered to replace. The key stuck in the lock like it always did, and I had to jiggle it twice before the door opened. I didn't turn on the lights right away. I just stood in the entryway, listening to the silence. After a moment, I walked to the bathroom and flipped the switch. The mirror showed me clearly. A 64-year-old man with graying hair, wine splattered across his white shirt like evidence at a crime scene. I touched the stain, felt where it had dried stiff against the fabric. I traced the edge with one finger. My reflection stared back. When had I gotten so old? I couldn't sleep. The wine was completely dry now. The shirt was uncomfortable and tight. I should have changed. I should have thrown it in the wash, but I didn't. Instead, I walked to the balcony and sat in the wicker chair I had bought at a discount store. Below, the ocean moved in the darkness. Waves I could hear, but not see. The wine stain felt like a brand. I kept touching it, confirming it was real. 3 years ago, Daniel had come to my retirement party at the courthouse. 30 years on the bench. They had given me a plaque and a speech about justice and fairness. Daniel had pulled me aside near the end, away from the others. Dad, I know this is a lot to ask, but Valerie and I have hit some financial turbulence. Bad timing on an investment. Could we stay at the house in the wealthy suburb? Temporarily? Just until we get back on our feet. 6 months? Maybe a year? I had said yes before he finished asking. Of course, son. That's what family is for. Don't worry about rent. Just focus on getting stable. I'll keep handling the property taxes and insurance. He had hugged me, thanked me, said I was saving them. 6 months turned into a year, and then 2 years. I never asked when they were leaving because I didn't want them to. I liked knowing they were in the house my grandfather built, keeping the family legacy alive. The second year, Daniel called on a Tuesday. Dad, Valerie has this incredible business opportunity. We just need $25,000 to get started. It's going to be huge. She already has clients lined up. I wrote the check that afternoon, drove to the villa to give it to him personally. He had seemed nervous, shuffling his feet in the entryway. Valerie had stayed in the back room. She yelled a thank you I barely heard. That was 2 years ago. The business never materialized. The money was never mentioned again. When I asked about it once, casually, Daniel had changed the subject to the weather. I raised my hand and touched the wine stain again. Still there. For the big family dinner last year, I asked if I should bring anything. Valerie's voice on the phone had been practical, almost kind. "Arthur, you don't need to come for dinner this year. We're inviting some of our friends. Younger crowd, you know. You'd probably be bored. Maybe Christmas." We didn't celebrate Christmas. The sky began to pale, the blackness turning to gray. I went inside and retrieved the wine-stained documents from where I had left them on the entry table. I spread them out on my small dining table. Property deed, transfer forms, insurance records. I had been paying $18,000 a year in property taxes, $4,500 on insurance, utilities, maintenance. 3 years of it, plus the $25,000 loan, $115,000, roughly. And they had already found buyers. $2.1 million, she had said. They had already found them. While living in my house for free, spending my money on imported wine and designer clothes and furniture I had never approved. They were never grateful. They were waiting for me to be generous enough to let go completely, waiting for me to transfer the deed so they could cash out. 3 years of my life, and I was nothing but an obstacle to their real estate transaction. Daniel hadn't said a single word, not when she threw the wine, not when she called me manipulative, not when I left. He had just sat there, staring at his plate, choosing her over me, without even having the courage to admit what he was choosing. The sun came up completely. I stood and went back to the bathroom mirror. The wine stain on my collar looked almost black in the morning light. I studied my face again, the lines around my eyes, the gray in my hair. I had spent 3 decades on the bench, weighing evidence, applying the law, delivering justice. I knew the difference between mercy and being a fool. I had extended mercy. They saw weakness. I touched the wine stain one last time. Then, slowly, I unbuttoned the shirt. I folded it carefully, precisely, the way I had folded my judge's robe at the end of every day. I placed it in the bottom drawer of my dresser, evidence not to be discarded. Then I opened my laptop and sat at the dining table. The wine-stained property documents were spread before me like case files. It was time to apply the law. The laptop screen glowed in the pre-dawn dark. I opened a blank spreadsheet and titled it Evidence XLS, a habit from my court days when every case needed documentation, categorization, proof. The next 2 weeks passed in a methodical analysis. My small dining table transformed into a workspace. Documents spread in organized piles. Yellow legal pads covered in numbered lists. My laptop perpetually open to state property law websites. I worked the same way I had for 30 years on the bench. Systematically, thoroughly. Emotion-clouding judgment was not an option. First, the property documents. I examined every page. The original deed from 1960. My grandfather's signature in faded blue ink. The transfer to my parents in 1978. The transfer to me in 1990, 3 years after my father passed. Every document bore a single name. My name. Not Daniel's, not Valerie's, just mine. The property tax receipts told their own story. $18,000 per year. For 3 years. $54,000 total. All paid from my retirement account. I found the insurance policies. My name, my payments, $4,500 annually. Another $15,000 over 3 years. Utility bills, all in my name. Roughly $7,000 a year, $22,000 more. Then the loan. I located the cash check, $25,000. On the memo line it read, "For Valerie's business project." I remembered Daniel's voice on the phone that day, excited, promising it would be huge. The business never materialized. The money never came back. It was never even mentioned. I entered every number into the spreadsheet, double-checking against the receipts. The keyboard clicked steadily in the silent apartment. When the final tally appeared, $115,000. I stared at it for a long moment. Then I saved the file and closed the laptop. The legal research took another 3 days. The state statutes were unambiguous. The owner of a property could terminate occupancy with 30 days written notice when no lease agreement existed. I read the statute 4 times. I highlighted the relevant passages. I copied them into a document labeled Legal Framework. What kind of contract do you have with family? None. Why do you trust them? Because you think blood means something. By the second week, I had my strategy. I took out a fresh yellow legal pad, the same kind I'd used for 30 years in my chambers, and wrote at the top 5-step plan. Step 1. Retain real estate attorney for accelerated legal sale. Step 2. Remove all personal property and family heirlooms prior to notice. Step 3. Secure a buyer willing to accept a standard closing window. Step 4. Serve legal 30-day notice to occupants. Step 5. Complete transaction and cut all contact permanently. I photographed the page with my phone. Then I circled Step 1. Underneath it, I wrote, Mark Webb? Mark had handled real estate cases in my courtroom years ago. Sharp, efficient, no tolerance for emotional complications. The hardest decision came on day 12. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out my current will. A single page. Simple language. Daniel, sole beneficiary. Retirement fund 340 Investment portfolio 280. Total 620. I picked up my phone and found Diane Morrison's contact. My finger hovered over her name. Estate attorney. Colleague. For 2 decades. Someone who knew my history. I pressed the button. Diane, it's Arthur. I need to revoke my current will and draft a new one. Complete removal of the primary beneficiary. Her pause lengthened. Arthur, that's... Are you sure? Daniel is your only son. Maybe you should wait until... I'm sure. Can you fit me in this week? Friday afternoon? I'll be there. After I hung up, I sat still for several minutes. This wasn't anger. Anger fades. This was the correction of an error. The same process I had applied countless times from the bench when reviewing cases built on false premises. On the evening of the 14th day, I called Daniel's number. It rang 4 times. Went to voicemail. I hung up and redialed. Voicemail. 3rd call. 4th call. Each rejection noted mentally like accumulating evidence. On the 5th try, he answered. Dad, look. I've been meaning to call. I need to pick up some documents from the house. I'll be there on Wednesday at 10 a.m. Please be home. Documents? What documents? Dad, I'm sorry about Valerie. She was upset. She didn't mean. Wednesday, 10 a.m. I ended the call and set the phone down with deliberate care, the same way I closed case files after delivering the final judgment. My hand didn't tremble this time. The shaking from 2 weeks ago was gone completely, replaced by something colder and more durable. I looked at my reflection in the darkened laptop screen. For 30 years, I had maintained composure in court while delivering life-changing sentences. I had mastered the ability to speak with absolute authority, to make people understand just from my tone that the discussion was over and the decision was made. Daniel heard it. That shift, 3 years of softness, patience, fatherly indulgence, erased in 8 words. He knew something fundamental had changed. Good. He should. They both should. I opened my desk drawer and looked at the wine-stained shirt, folded precisely where I'd placed it 2 weeks earlier. Evidence. Still preserved. Not for sentiment, but for principle. The stain had darkened to almost black. Permanent. I closed the drawer and returned to my yellow legal pad. Next to step 1, I wrote, Mark Webb, Monday 9 a.m., and underlined it twice. Monday morning, I dressed as I used to for court. Pressed white shirt, navy tie, charcoal suit jacket. In the bathroom mirror, I straightened the knot until it was perfectly centered. This wasn't casual business. It was a professional engagement. Appearance mattered. I organized the documents in my briefcase by category: property deeds, tax receipts, utility bills, the $25,000 cashed check. The wine-stained leather folder from the dinner went on top. The stains had faded to a brown, but they were still visible. A reminder of why I was doing this. Mark Webb's office occupied the 3rd floor of a building downtown, 10 minutes from the Spanish Villa. The waiting room had modern furniture and walls lined with real estate law books, spines perfectly aligned. Professional, organized, exactly what I needed. Mark came out of his office at 9 a.m. on the dot. Mid-40s, expensive suit, firm handshake. Judge, good to see you again. Retired judge, I corrected. And now just Arthur. His office overlooked the main avenue. I sat across from his desk and opened my briefcase, laying out the documents one by one. Property deed, tax receipts organized by year, insurance policies, utility statements, the cashed check, each document placed deliberately, creating a visual map of the evidence. I own a house in this neighborhood, I began, using the same tone I'd used for opening statements. My son and his wife have occupied it rent-free for 3 years. No lease exists. It's family. 2 weeks ago, they made their intention clear to sell the property immediately upon transfer and divide the proceeds. I have decided to sell it myself. Mark leaned forward, examining the deed. Registered solely in your name, correct? Inherited from my parents. 5 owners. No liens. No encumbrances. He reviewed the tax receipts, nodding. You've maintained all financial obligations. Every payment for 3 years. Property taxes, insurance, utilities. They have paid nothing. I slid the spreadsheet across his desk. Total financial contribution from me, $115,000. Mark studied the numbers. Then he looked up. Mr. Arthur, legally, you are in an absolutely strong position. The house is yours. No lease exists. I assume because it's family. Correct. No formal agreement. They asked to stay temporarily 3 years ago. I agreed. Then under state law, they are occupants without a contract. You can sell the property at will. You are only obligated to provide 30 days written notice before they must vacate. The confirmation settled something in my chest. Not satisfaction exactly, but validation. My research had been accurate. The law was on my side. I want this handled discreetly, I said. No advance warning. Find a buyer, secure the deal, then notify them. Mark tapped his pen on the desk. Understood. A typical closing takes 60 days. We'll need that time for title search, inspections, paperwork. You will serve the notice 30 days before closing. That complies with the law and gives them minimal time to interfere. Your fee? Full representation through closing. $8,500. Acceptable. When can we start? I'll draft the listing agreement today. We can have the property on the market by the weekend. He paused. One question. Personal property in the house. Furniture. Belongings. Any concerns there? I had anticipated this. Significant concerns. The house contains valuable pieces that belong to my parents. An antique dining set, roughly $12,000. A collection of rare books. Another $7,000 or $8,000. Paintings. My grandfather's stamp collection. I need to remove them before the sale. You have every right to remove your personal property, but given the tension, I'd recommend doing it carefully. Perhaps hire professionals? Already planned. I'm handling it this week. We shook hands. I left his office with a signed representation agreement and a clear timeline. 60 days to close. 30-day notice to occupants. 90 days total until I never had to see that house. Or them. Again. I spent the next 2 days preparing for the Wednesday visit. I made lists of every valuable item I could remember in the house, particularly in my old study. The room Daniel and Valerie had avoided because it contained old things. My grandmother's mahogany dining set with 8 chairs. My father's law library. First editions of historic cases. Paintings I had inherited. That study held $30,000 in family heirlooms they had ignored for 3 years. Wednesday morning arrived. I drove to the house carrying a camera, a tape measure, and my yellow legal pad. The driveway looked the same, but I felt different pulling into it. No nervousness. No anticipation. Just cold purpose. Daniel opened the door before I knocked. He had dark circles under his eyes. His face was drawn. Dad, thanks for coming. Listen. About last week, Valerie she gets emotional about money, but she didn't mean. Not now, Daniel. I'm here on business. Business? What business? Dad, can we just talk? I walked past him. Where's the key to the study? The study? It's unlocked, but why? I walked down the hall without answering. Valerie's absence registered immediately. She was home. I could feel it, but she was staying in the bedroom. Demonstrative contempt. She couldn't even be bothered to face me. The study looked exactly as I had left it 3 years ago. Mahogany furniture gleaming, books lining 2 walls. Paintings hung precisely where my father had placed them. I put my camera on the desk, and I began to systematically photograph every piece, multiple angles, close-ups of maker's marks, measurements recorded on my legal pad. Daniel appeared in the doorway. "What are you doing?" I didn't look up. "Inventory of personal assets. These items belong to me. I have every right to document my own possessions." "But why now? What's going on?" "I'm clarifying ownership. I photographed the dining set, counting chairs, noting the carved legs. These pieces were never part of the house. They are my personal property." He shifted, hands in his pockets. "You're not going to take all this stuff, are you? This stuff has always been here. It's part of the house." I stopped photographing, and I turned to face him. I made eye contact. I held it until he looked away. "Daniel, these pieces belong to my parents. My grandmother's dining set, my father's book collection. They were never part of the house's structure. They are mine. I will be removing them when the time comes." "When the time comes? What does that mean?" "Dad, you're scaring me." "Ian." I went back to photographing. He stood in the doorway for another 5 minutes. Then he disappeared. I heard murmured voices from the bedroom, him reporting to Valerie, probably. I didn't care. The inventory took 90 minutes. Every piece documented, measured, catalogued. When I finished, I walked to the front door. Daniel materialized from the kitchen. "Dad." I nodded once. Acknowledgement, not warmth, and I left. In my car, I pulled out my phone and searched. Antique appraiser, local area. The top result showed 4.9 stars, 200 reviews, timeless treasures. Owner, Ruth Castellano. Specialized in estate appraisals and furniture authentication. I drafted an email. "Miss Castellano, I require a professional appraisal of antique furniture and rare books at a property in the neighborhood. Items include an early 20th century mahogany dining set, a collection of first edition legal texts, and various heritage pieces. I may also need assistance with careful removal and storage. Available next week. Arthur." I reread it. I deleted "my son and his wife currently live there" and replaced it with nothing. Sent. Driving home, my phone pinged. Ruth's reply. "Mr. Arthur, I'd be happy to assist with your appraisal. I can schedule a visit next week. Would Tuesday morning work for you?" I pulled over and typed. "Tuesday at 10 a.m. I will coordinate with the current occupants." Not my son. Occupant. I sent the message and pulled back into traffic. Heading for my apartment. Step 2 was moving exactly as planned. The following Monday morning, I arrived at the house 10 minutes before Ruth. I had told Daniel it was a professional appraisal for insurance purposes. Plausible, not alarming. He had agreed nervously over the phone, promised he and Valerie would stay out of the way. Ruth's van pulled into the drive at 10 a.m. exactly. She stepped out wearing simple linen trousers and a crisp white blouse, her silver hair pulled back in a sleek, low bun. She carried a leather tool case in one hand and a tablet in the other. Everything about her movements suggested quiet competence. No rush, no hesitation. Daniel opened the door before we reached it. "Good morning. You must be the appraiser." He extended his hand. Ruth shook it briefly. "Ruth Castellano. I'm here to assess heritage pieces for Mr. Arthur. Professional, polite, nothing more." Valerie appeared behind Daniel, dressed carefully, in a way that suggested she had spent time preparing. "Hi, I'm Valerie, Daniel's wife. We live here." She smiled, extending her hand with exaggerated warmth. "It's such a beautiful home, isn't it?" Ruth's handshake was even shorter. "Ruth Castellano." Then she turned to me. "Shall we begin, Mr. Arthur? I'd like to examine the mahogany set first while the morning light is optimal." Valerie's smile faltered. I led Ruth to the study, leaving Valerie standing in the hallway, dismissed not with rudeness, but with professional focus. In the study, Ruth set down her case and pulled out a pair of white cotton gloves. She put them on before she touched anything. The gesture impressed me. Reverence for the objects. Respect for preservation. She ran her gloved hand along the edge of the dining table, examining the carved details. Then she knelt, using her phone's flashlight to check for maker's marks underneath. Caribbean mahogany, she said softly, her fingers tracing the wood grain. Hand-carved details. Original finish. You can see the joinery technique here. 1,920 seconds craftsmanship. She pulled out a small jeweler's loupe, examining the carving more closely. Pre-revolutionary Cuban work. This is extraordinary. It was my grandmother's, I said. She brought it from Havana in 1959. Ruth Mamiru. Then it's not just valuable monetarily, it's irreplaceable. She photographed the set from multiple angles, tapped notes into her tablet. Current market value, $15,000 to $18,000, possibly more to the right collector. But I suspect you're not interested in selling. Not yet. She moved to the bookshelves, running a gloved finger along the spines. When she reached my father's legal collection, she paused. She carefully removed one volume. First edition, Blackstone's Commentaries, 1,803. She opened it at the spine's natural breaking point. Photographed the title page. Remarkable condition. The binding is original. Sheepskin. My father's prize piece. He had excellent taste. This is $3,000 minimum, possibly $5,000 to the right collector. She continued examining books, handling each with the same careful respect. Valerie appeared in the doorway. So, what's it all worth? Her voice had a calculating edge. Just curious. Ruth didn't look up from the book she was photographing. My report goes to Mr. Arthur. If he chooses to share the details with you, that is his decision. Professional boundary set. Valerie's mouth tightened. She disappeared again. For the next 2 hours, Ruth worked methodically. She examined paintings, measured furniture, photographed my grandfather's stamp collection. Every item documented with photos, measurements, condition notes. At one point, I found myself alone with her in the study. Daniel had retreated somewhere. Valerie had stopped hovering. Ruth paused. She looked at me directly. Mr. Arthur, may I ask something? Her voice was soft but curious. Why are you appraising your own possessions in what appears to be your own home? I hesitated. Something in her directness, her lack of judgment, made me answer honestly. Because this is no longer my home. I'm taking what belongs to me before I leave. Permanently. She held my gaze for 3 seconds. Then she nodded once. I understand. You do? Yes, I do. No prying questions. No demand for explanation. Just acceptance. Ruth returned to her tablet. Made a few more notes. Then you will need help removing these pieces. They are fragile, valuable, and based on the tension I'm sensing here, you'll want this done discreetly, quietly. Am I correct? Very correct. I have a professional team. We can do it in 1 day when the house is empty. Climate-controlled truck, proper equipment, secure storage. She looked at me. If you trust me. I studied her face, the quiet intelligence in her brown eyes, the steadiness of her posture. 3 years of manipulation had taught me to recognize genuine transparency. I saw it here. How much? $3,000 for the move and the first month of climate-controlled storage. If you later decide to sell through my gallery, I charge the standard 20% commission. No pressure to sell. No hidden fees. She stated the terms without hesitation. Clear, direct. That seems fair. Ruth nodded. I'll need 1 day's notice to arrange the team. You tell me when. We moved to the living room to finish the assessment. When Ruth completed her work, she handed me her business card. Simple, elegant design. Timeless treasures. Ruth Castellano. Estate appraisals and authentication. At the door, she paused. Mr. Arthur, I don't know your full story. I don't need to, but I recognize someone protecting what is rightfully theirs. That takes courage. Or stubbornness. She smiled slightly. Sometimes they are the same thing. After Ruth left, I drove back to my apartment. That evening, an email arrived. I opened the attachment, a full PDF report. Every item photographed, appraised, with detailed condition notes and market values. Completely professional. Then I scrolled to the bottom. A handwritten note. Scanned. If you ever need someone to just talk to, my door is open. I know what betrayal from loved ones feels like. I survived it. You will too, Ruth. I stared at that note for several minutes, Someone saw it. Someone understood. For the first time in weeks, the cold determination inside me thawed. Slightly. It wasn't weakness, just the recognition that I wasn't completely alone in this. I picked up my phone, started to type a reply. Then I stopped, put the phone down. I walked to my balcony overlooking the ocean. The waves moved in the darkness below. Ruth's words echoed. I survived it. You will too. Maybe I would. 2 weeks later, Mark called. Arthur, I have good news. A couple from up north, nearing 60, looking for a retirement property in the state. They love the Spanish architecture. They're offering $1.82 million. That's below market, I said, even though I knew it didn't matter. By $30,000? Yes, but they're waiving inspection, paying cash, willing to close in 60 days. It's a clean deal. I'll take it. Excellent. Come in tomorrow to sign. I'll prepare the official notice for Daniel and Valerie. They'll receive it on Monday. Immediately grab the Mia hooch. Can you move everything this Saturday? Before the notice is delivered? Absolutely. I'll arrange it. Then I dialed Daniel. He answered on the third ring. Dad, I need to pick up personal items from the house on Saturday. I'll have a moving truck from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. It would be easiest if you weren't there. Personal items? What items? Dad, I don't understand. I heard movement. Then Valerie's voice breaking in. She had grabbed the phone. You can't just come here and take our things. This is our home. Valerie, they are my belongings from my house. You will receive a detailed list. Saturday, 9 a.m. I ended the call before she could reply. Saturday morning arrived clear and warm. I got to the house at 8:45 a.m. Ruth's specialized moving truck turned the corner at 9 a.m. exactly, followed by her van. 3 men got out, all in matching uniforms. Professional movers, not day laborers. Ruth carried a clipboard. Daniel opened the door. His face looked drawn. Valerie stood behind him, arms crossed, dressed as if attending a business meeting. They decided to stay, to monitor, to control what they could. Good morning, Ruth said pleasantly. We'll work as quickly as possible to minimize the disruption. She handed Daniel a document. This is the inventory we will be removing. Everything listed was previously documented and photographed as Mr. Arthur's personal property. Daniel took it, his hands shaking slightly. He scanned the pages. 3 pages, single-spaced, photos attached, his mouth opened, closed. Ruth's team started immediately. They moved with practical efficiency. Furniture dollies, protective blankets, careful maneuvering. One man individually wrapped each leg of the mahogany dining chairs. Another used archival boxes for the rare books, placing acid-free tissue between volumes. Valerie followed them, her voice rising. That table has been here for years. It's part of the house. You can't just take it. Ruth turned to her, expression neutral. Ma'am, this furniture is documented as the owner's personal belongings. Each piece was inherited from his parents. You have no legal claim. I'll call the police. Please do. Ruth's voice remained calm. I have the full documentation, the signed inventory, and proper authorization. The officers will confirm we are operating legally. Valerie didn't call. She continued to follow the movers, her protests growing shriller as the truck filled. Daniel remained in the hallway, still as a statue, watching his grandfather's furniture disappear. He looked at me once. I met his gaze. He turned away. The operation took 4 hours. Mahogany dining set, book collection, paintings, tools from the garage, photo albums I had stored in a closet. My father's desk, everything on the list, nothing beyond it. When the last box was loaded, I walked over to Daniel. I handed him a sealed envelope, a complete inventory of everything removed. My parents' furniture, my personal books, my tools, my photographs, nothing that belonged to the house's furnishings. He took it with both hands, ripped it open immediately, scanned the pages looking for something to object to. He found nothing. Dad, why are you doing this? His voice cracked slightly. What are you planning? I looked at him directly. Daniel, 3 weeks ago, your wife threw wine in my face at my own table. You sat there, silent. You let it happen. That told me everything I needed to know about where your loyalty lies. I was in shock. I didn't know what. You had 3 weeks to call, to apologize, to take responsibility. You did nothing. That is also an answer. I turned toward my car. Behind me, Valerie's voice rose to a shriek. We'll sue him! Our lawyer will destroy him! He can't do this to us! I didn't turn back. I didn't acknowledge her. I got in my car and followed Ruth's truck out of the driveway. We drove to her storage facility. The team unloaded everything into a climate-controlled unit. When they finished, Ruth locked it and handed me the key. Ben, she said quietly, let me buy you a coffee. You need to sit down. We drove to a small cafe, found a table on the terrace overlooking the bay. Ruth ordered for both of us. She seemed to sense I couldn't make even small decisions right then. When the coffee came, she reached across the table and covered my hand with hers. You handled that with remarkable composure, but I saw your face when Daniel just stood there, not defending you. Again, I looked at our joined hands. He's my only son, and I just waged a battle against him. No. Her grip tightened slightly. You fought for yourself against people who were using you. There's a distinction. A son protects his father when someone attacks him. Daniel hasn't been your son in a long time. The words hurt because they were true. I felt something crack in my chest, not breaking, but opening. It doesn't make it hurt less. Of course not. You're allowed to grieve what you lost. But you're also allowed to survive, to protect yourself, to move on. I looked at her face. Why are you helping me? You barely know me. I know enough. I know what it looks like when someone refuses to be a victim. She paused, her thumb moving slightly against my hand. I spent 10 years rebuilding after my husband tried to destroy me in our divorce. I recognize that strength, and I recognize when someone deserves to not be alone in their fight. We sat in silence for a moment, her hand warm and steady on mine. For the first time since my wife died 5 years ago, found a table on the terrace overlooking the bay. Ruth ordered for both of us. She seemed to sense I couldn't make even small decisions right then. When the coffee came, she reached across the table and covered my hand with hers. You handled that with remarkable composure, but I saw your face when Daniel just stood there, not defending you. Again, I looked at our joined hands. He's my only son, and I just waged a battle against him. No. Her grip tightened slightly. Daniel will receive it tomorrow morning. Let me know if there are problems. I typed back. He won't. Tomorrow, Daniel would find out the house was sold, that he had 30 days to leave. Tomorrow, the final phase would begin. But tonight, I had Ruth's warmth still lingering on my hand, and that made all of it bearable. Monday morning, May 19th. I was making a latte when my phone rang. Mark, it's delivered, he said. Courier confirmed signature at 10:03 a.m. Daniel signed for it. J.M., why are you helping me? You barely know me. I know enough. I know what it looks like when someone refuses to be a victim. She paused, her thumb moving slightly against my hand. I spent 10 years rebuilding after my husband tried to destroy me in our divorce. I recognize that strength, and I recognize when someone deserves to not be alone in their fight. We sat in silence for a moment, her hand warm and steady on mine. For the first time since my wife died 5 years ago. 3 more calls from Valerie in the next 10 minutes. Each one declined before it completed the first ring. Then Daniel tried. I let it ring. Once, twice, 3 times. On the 5th ring, I answered. Daniel. Dad. His voice was cracked with panic. What have you done? You can't sell the house. We live here. This is our home. Our whole life is here. Almost nice. Daniel, this is my house. It has always been my house. I had every legal right to sell it at any time. Itadza. Thank you. Call me if there are problems. There would be problems. But now they were the legal kind, the kind I understood completely. The call came 40 minutes later. Valerie first. Naturally, my phone flashed her name. I let it ring once, then declined. Immediate callback. Declined. Then a text. All caps. You won't get away with this. We will sue you. This is our house. I watched the message turn to read but did not reply. Or 3 weeks ago when your wife threw wine in my face at my own dinner because I wasn't transferring the deed fast enough. Silence. Then a fumbling sound. The phone changing hands. You are a pathetic, cruel old man. Valerie's voice raw with rage. We wasted years of our lives in this house. Years, taking care of it, living in your shadow. You owe us. You owe us this house. I smiled, though she couldn't see me. Taking care of it. Valerie, I paid every bill, property taxes. You have received the proper 30-day notice. That is more than sufficient under state law. But where will we go? He was breathing hard, the words tumbling out. We have nowhere to go, no plan. How can you do this to us? That should have been your question 3 years ago when you decided to live in my house rent-free, or a year ago when you borrowed $25,000 and never mentioned repayment, $18,000 a year. Insurance, $4,500 a year. Utilities, roughly $7,000 a year. For 3 years, that adds up to over $115,000. You paid exactly zero, so no. I don't owe you anything. You have 30 days. I suggest you use them productively. I ended the call. I opened my contacts. Found Daniel's name. Press block this caller. Then I did the same for Valerie. 2 taps. Years of manipulation over. I placed the phone face down on my kitchen counter and went back to my coffee. Translation. Someone willing to file frivolous lawsuits for a retainer. Kessler charged $5,000 up front. They paid it, adding to their growing financial crisis. Mark called me Thursday night. They filed an emergency injunction, claiming verbal contract, detrimental reliance. It's weak, but there's a hearing scheduled for June 9th. Will it delay the closing? Potentially. If the judge grants a temporary stay pending the full hearing, our buyers are nervous. We'll handle it, I said. I know how to prepare for court. That same week I saw Ruth almost daily. Coffee on Tuesday at a cafe overlooking the marina. Wednesday lunch at a small bistro. Thursday we walked through the botanical gardens, talking about everything except the house sale, her years rebuilding after the divorce, my judicial career, books we had read, places we wanted to see. Friday night, after she closed her shop, we met at a waterfront restaurant. We sat on the terrace as the sun began its descent into the bay, painting the water in shades of amber and rose. Ruth reached across the table, covered my hand with hers. The gesture was deliberate, gentle. I turned my palm up, receiving her touch. Arthur, I don't know what comes next for you, she said softly. The sale? What happens after? Where life takes you? But I want you to know something. You're not alone. Not anymore. A lump formed in my throat. Ruth, I mean it. Whatever you need. Someone to talk to. Someone to just sit with. Someone who understands what betrayal feels like. I'm here. I'll be here. I squeezed her hand, unable to speak for a moment. When I found my voice, it came out rough. I know, and it means more than I can say. We sat in silence as the sun touched the horizon, her hand warm and steady in mine. For the first time since my wife died 5 years ago, I felt connected to another person. Not just alliance. Not just gratitude. Something deeper. Something that felt like the possibility of a future I had stopped imagining. Ruth's phone vibrated. She glanced at it, reluctant. I have to go. Early appointment tomorrow. But neither of us moved right away. Finally we stood. There was a moment, brief, charged, where a kiss might have happened. But it didn't. Too soon. Not yet. But the possibility hung between us like a promise. I drove home feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Not the cold determination that had sustained me through the planning and execution. Something warmer. Peace. Maybe. Or hope. My phone rang as I pulled into my building's garage. Mark, we have a situation, he said. They've filed that injunction. Hearing scheduled for June 9th. We need to prepare our response. I put the car in park. Sat in the dark for a moment. I'll be ready. The battle wasn't over. But, looking at Ruth's last text, thank you for tonight. Sleep well. I realized I had something worth fighting for beyond just justice. I had a reason to win, and then move on. I spent the next week preparing as if I were back on the bench. Except this time, I was building the case instead of judging it. Every bank statement showing the house payments. Every email exchange with Daniel. I searched for any mention of transfer or promise of ownership. I found nothing. Only language about staying temporarily and getting back on your feet. I drafted my affidavit myself, typing slowly but precisely. 30 years of reading affidavits had taught me exactly what judges needed. Facts, dates, dollar amounts, no emotion, no editorializing, just the truth, documented and verifiable. Mark notarized it in his office. "This is excellent work," he said, reviewing the evidence I had organized. 36 months of payments, the unrepaid loan, their complete lack of financial contribution. "It's overwhelming." "It's accurate," I corrected. "That's what makes it overwhelming." The buyers called Mark twice that week, nervous about the delays. He assured them the case was frivolous, that it would be dismissed quickly. I hoped he was right. June 9th arrived, warm and clear. I dressed carefully. Navy suit, white shirt, conservative tie, the uniform of professional credibility. I had worn versions of this outfit for 3 decades in courtrooms. Today felt like coming full circle. The county courthouse stood familiar and imposing. I went through security, the metal detector beeping, the ritual as familiar to me as breathing, these hallways, these courtrooms. This was my world, just from a different angle now. Mark was waiting outside 4B Judge Morales. I've appeared before her. Fair, efficient, no tolerance for nonsense. Good. We went inside. The room was small, designed for fast motions and hearings rather than trials. Valerie and Daniel were sitting at the plaintiff's table with Damien Kessler. Valerie wore black, a dress I'd never seen, hair pulled back severely, minimal makeup, the costume of a victim. Daniel wore a suit that didn't fit. His face was pale, his eyes avoided mine. Judge Morales entered. Mid-50 seconds, efficient movements, sharp eyes behind reading glasses. We stood. She sat. We sat. "Emergency motion for injunction," she said, glancing at her notes. "Mr. Kessler, you filed. You may proceed." Kessler stood, adjusted his tie. "Your Honor, my clients received a 30-day legal notice as required by state statute." Judge Morales looked at Kessler. "Proceed. Mr. Kessler, stick to the facts, please." Kessler readjusted. He continued. "My clients relied on oral promises made repeatedly by Mr. Arthur. They had every reason to believe." "Excuse me," Judge Morales held up a hand. "Do your clients have any written evidence of these alleged promises? Any email, text message, letter?" Kessler hesitated. "Well, Your Honor, family agreements are often verbal. That's not what I asked. Do you have written evidence? Yes or no?" "No." "But, thank you, Mr. Webb. Your response." Mark stood. He placed a thick binder on the podium. "Your Honor, the plaintiffs can't produce written evidence because no such promises ever existed. Meanwhile, Mr. Arthur has provided 36 months of bank statements proving he paid all property taxes, insurance, utilities, and maintenance, totaling over $115,000. The plaintiffs contributed $0. They lived rent-free for 3 years. This is not detrimental reliance. This is exploitation of generosity." Judge Morales began flipping through the evidence. Her expression grew progressively stern. "Mr. Daniel," she said, addressing him directly, "I have a few questions. Do you have any written documents, email, text, letter, where your father agreed to transfer this property to you?" Daniel stood awkwardly. "No, Your Honor. But he said verbally the house was for the family. Did you pay rent to live in this house?" "No. But it's family. So you paid the property taxes?" "No." "The insurance premiums?" "No." "The utility bills?" Daniel's voice dropped to barely audible. "No." "So you lived completely free for 3 years?" A long pause. "Yes." Judge Morales took off her glasses, set them on the bench, looked at the evidence again, looked at Kessler. "I have reviewed the motion and the response. This case is simple." Her voice carried the weight of final judgment. "Under state law, oral promises regarding real estate transfers have no legal standing without a written contract. Mr. Arthur was the owner of this property. He paid all expenses. He provided legal notice. He has the absolute right to sell it. This motion is denied. The plaintiffs are to vacate the premises by June 15th as legally notified." She lifted her gavel. "We are adjourned." The crack of wood on wood echoed in the small room. Final. Irreversible. Valerie made a sound. Choked. Disbelieving. Daniel's head dropped. Kessler tried to speak, but Judge Morales had already stood and walked out the door to her chambers. Outside, on the courthouse plaza, Valerie lost what control she had left. She lunged at me, her heels clicking rapidly on the concrete. "You destroyed us!" she screamed. "You destroyed your family! What kind of father does this?" I stood still. I let her come. I let her rage wash past me. When she finished, I spoke quietly. "No, Valerie. You destroyed the family when you threw wine in my face in my own home. I just corrected the mistake I made 3 years ago when I trusted you with my property. We gave you 3 years of our lives. I gave you $115,000, a home, and unconditional support. You gave me contempt. I'd say you got the better deal." Behind her, Daniel walked up slowly. His voice broke. "Dad, please, we have nowhere to go. No savings. What are we supposed to do?" I looked at my son, really looked at him. I saw the man who had sat silent while his wife abused me, the man who had taken everything and given nothing in return. "Daniel, you had an income for 3 years, a good income. If you hadn't spent every dollar living in a $2 million house rent-free, enjoying prestige you couldn't afford, you would have savings. You made choices, now you live with them." I turned toward the parking area. "Goodbye, Daniel." Not son, just his name. The relationship was already gone. Now the word was too. I walked to my car. Behind me, Daniel yelled something I didn't understand. I didn't turn back. I got in my car, started the engine, drove away. In the rearview mirror, Daniel stood on the courthouse steps. Valerie was screaming at him now, turning her fury on the only target she had left. I drove straight to Ruth's shop. She saw my face through the window, immediately flipped the close sign and took me upstairs to her private office. She made tea. She didn't ask questions. She just waited. "I won," I said finally. "Complete victory." The judge didn't even hesitate. "And you feel?" "I feel terrible," Ruth finished gently. "Because he's my son. And I just had to beat him in court." I nodded. I couldn't speak. She came over to me, put her arms around my shoulders. I let my head rest against her. I let the weight show. "Listen to me," she said, her voice firm against my ear. "You won a case against people who were exploiting you. A real son protects his father, defends him. Daniel chose Valerie's greed over your dignity every single time. He stopped being your son when he sat silent while she abused you. He's still my only son." "I know." Her arms tightened. "And you are allowed to grieve that. But you are also allowed to survive, to protect yourself, to move on." We stood like that for a long time, her strength holding me up. Outside, the afternoon light was shifting toward evening. She finally let go, wiped a tear from my cheek I didn't know had fallen. "Ben," she said, "I'm making you dinner, real food. We'll sit, and we'll eat, and we'll talk about anything except your son and that house." I nodded, managed a small smile. As we walked to her car, my phone vibrated. Text from Mark. "Buyers confirmed. Closing proceeds as scheduled. June 15th, 2 p.m. The end was in sight, but looking at Ruth walking beside me, opening her car door, turning back to look with concern and warmth, I realized something else. The beginning was in sight, too. June 15th arrived bright and clear. I met Mark at his office mid-morning. The closing ceremony was surprisingly mundane for something so significant. Papers spread across the conference table, 4 people reviewing documents in careful silence. Richard and Margaret sat across from me, near 60, excited for their retirement in the state, but maintaining professional composure. Their lawyer reviewed contract clauses. The title company representative verified signatures. Mark guided us through each page methodically. Initial here, sign here, date here. My signature appeared on page after page. The motion became automatic, almost meditative. Every stroke of the pen was a period at the end of a sentence, a door closing, a chapter ending. The wire transfer confirmation appeared on Mark's laptop screen. He turned it toward me. $1.74 million deposited in the account. I nodded. Richard extended his hand across the table. "Thank you, Mr. Arthur. We'll take excellent care of her." I shook his hand. "I'm sure you will." Mark placed the keys in a small envelope, slid them across the mahogany surface. Margaret picked them up, smiled. Something in her expression, pure joy, uncomplicated anticipation, reminded me why houses should be homes, not weapons. That afternoon, county sheriff's deputies knocked on the villa's door. I wasn't there, but Mark called to tell me, Daniel had answered. Officer Martinez, according to Mark's contact at the sheriff's office, had read the official eviction notice in the flat tone of someone who delivered hundreds of these. You have 24 hours to vacate these premises. Valerie had screamed. The officers had waited impassively until she finished. Then they left. Standard procedure. The next morning, I drove past the house, just once, from a distance, and saw the U-Haul truck in the driveway, watched them loading boxes. I didn't stop. I didn't announce myself. I just observed from 2 blocks away. Then I drove home. They moved to a more modest neighborhood, a rental apartment, small, $1,800 a month instead of free. Mark heard through courthouse connections that their financial situation had deteriorated severely. Credit cards maxed out from the lawyer's fees. No savings. The prestigious lifestyle they had enjoyed at my expense had evaporated overnight. Over the next few days, Daniel tried to call. My phone showed number no longer in service. I had changed it the day after the closing. New number. Clean break. He tried to email. I had closed that address too. Complete separation. A week after the closing, I sat in Diane Porter's office. We had worked together 15 years. She had handled my wife's estate, various legal matters, my previous will. She knew my history. Arthur, she said, reviewing my request, I have to ask. Are you absolutely sure about this? Daniel is your only son. Sometimes family rifts heal over time. Diane. I kept my voice level. My son sat silent while his wife threw wine in my face at my own dinner. He borrowed $25,000 with promises of repayment that never materialized. He lived in my house for 3 years without contributing a single dollar. When I needed him to be a son, he was absent. Why would I reward that? She sighed, nodded. I understand. Who do you want to designate as beneficiaries? Dos recipients. The State Judicial Veterans Support Fund. $340,000 from my retirement fund. And Ruth Castellano, $280,000 from my investment account. Diane looked up, surprised. Ruth Castellano from Timeless Treasures? I've seen her at charity events. I smiled, slightly. Yes, when everyone else saw me as a resource or an obstacle, she saw me as a person. That matters. It matters a lot. Diane's expression softened. I think that's a beautiful choice. The new will took a week to draft. I reviewed it carefully. Approved every clause. I signed it in Diane's conference room with 2 paralegals as witnesses. The notary pressed her seal into the paper. The physical imprint made it real. Irreversible. Daniel was legally disinherited. The previous will formally revoked. Meanwhile, Ruth and I spent more and more time together. No longer just coffee. Dinners at quiet restaurants. Weekend walks on the beach. Visits to galleries where we discussed paintings for hours. Discovering we shared similar tastes. Preference for landscape over portrait. Color over monochrome. Honesty over pretense. She told me more about her divorce 10 years ago. Her husband's financial betrayal, the brutal legal battle, the years rebuilding her business and her trust. I shared more about my late wife. The gradual erosion of my relationship with Daniel that had started years before Valerie. My regret at not seeing it sooner. In late June, Ruth arranged for me to meet her son, David. Lunch at a bistro. He was 40, software engineer, smart and warm, protective of his mother, but not hostile. At one point, while Ruth was in the restroom, David leaned forward. I'm going to be direct. My mom went through something terrible with my father. It took her a decade to rebuild. She's been alone because she's cautious. If you're with her, treat her right. It's my intention. She deserves nothing less. He studied my face for a moment, then nodded. Good, because she talks about you constantly. I haven't seen her this alive in years. Mid-July brought an evening that felt suspended out of time. Ruth and I sat on my apartment terrace, wine glasses between us, watching the sun paint the ocean in shades of amber and rose. A comfortable silence stretched between us, the kind that only comes when words aren't necessary. Finally I spoke. I thought my life was over at 64. That after the whole thing with Daniel there was nothing left for me except to exist to go through the motions, but you showed me I was wrong. No? She turned to look at me. You showed yourself. You stood up. You fought for your dignity. I just had the privilege of watching. You were more than a spectator. Maybe. Maybe we helped each other. I stood up. I held out my hand. She took it. Stood up. We stood close. The sun setting behind us. The future uncertain, but somehow less frightening than it had been months ago. I leaned forward. She met me halfway. Our lips touched softly, tentative at first, then more certain, 3 seconds. We pulled back, looked at each other, smiled. Then we kissed again, longer, my hand cupping her face, her hand resting against my chest. Not desperate, deliberate. Two people who had earned the right to be careful with their hearts. When we finally separated, she rested her forehead against mine. I should go, she whispered. Early shipment at the shop tomorrow. Have dinner with me tomorrow night. Somewhere nice. I want to celebrate. Celebrate what? New beginnings. She kissed me one more time, quick and soft. Then she was gone. I stood alone on the terrace, watching the ocean darken, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Not just peace, real happiness. My phone vibrated. Email notification. Subject, from Daniel. I stared at it for a long moment. Then I placed the phone face down on the table. Tomorrow. I would read it tomorrow. Tonight was for this feeling, this warmth, this possibility, this life I was building from the ashes of the old one. One morning in early August, I sat on my balcony with coffee, checking emails on my tablet. The subject line stopped me. From Daniel. Please read. I reached for my cup, opened it. The email was long, longer than any communication Daniel had sent me in years. I read standing up. Then I sat down slowly. I read it again. Then a third time. Dad, I don't know if you'll read this. I understand if you delete it, but I need to write it anyway. These past 3 months have been the hardest of my life. Not just financially, though that's been brutal, but emotionally. Valerie and I barely speak. She blames me for everything. Maybe she's right. I started therapy. The therapist asked me when I stopped standing up for myself. I couldn't remember. Maybe I never started. I let Valerie control everything. I let her treat you terribly. I stayed silent when she threw that wine. I've been a coward. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I don't deserve it, but maybe someday, if you're ever willing, we could talk. Just talk. I miss my dad. Daniel. I walked to Ruth's shop, carrying the tablet like evidence. She looked up from cataloging a collection of antique watches, saw my face, immediately stopped working. I handed her the tablet without speaking. She read it carefully, then looked up. What do you feel? I thought for a long moment. Relief, that he's finally seeing what I saw, and sadness, because recognizing the problem doesn't undo the damage, and freedom, because it's not my job to fix him anymore. No, she said softly. It's not. He's 38 years old. If he's finally growing up, good, but he needs to do it for himself. Ruth nodded, handed me back the tablet. So what will you do? I sat down at her desk, opened my phone's email. I typed slowly, deleted sentences, rewrote. Ruth organized shelves nearby, glancing over occasionally, but not hovering. When I finished, I showed her the phone. Does this sound right? She read, nodded. I pressed send. Daniel, I received your email. I see you're starting to understand what happened. That's good. It's progress. But I need you to know, I need time. Maybe a lot of time. Maybe forever. I don't know yet. What happened fundamentally changed me. I am no longer the father who allowed himself to be taken advantage of, who prioritized peace over respect. I am a person who protects his dignity. If you are truly changing, and I hope you are, do it for yourself. Not to win back my approval, not to get access to my resources, for yourself. Be well. Dad? I placed the phone face down on her desk. Ruth came over to me, put her arms around my shoulders. You handled that perfectly. Then she smiled. Want to take a trip? Get away for a week? We flew to a city in the desert in mid-August, the high desert landscape spreading out below the plain. Red rocks, vast sky, room to breathe. We stayed in a small adobe inn with a courtyard full of hollyhocks and sage. Days spent at the Modern Art Museum, strolling through the gallery-lined street, hikes on trails with views that stretched forever, afternoons at intimate restaurants, nights on the inn's rooftop, under stars more visible than any I had seen in years. One night, lying on woven blankets, the Milky Way splashed above us. Ruth spoke quietly. "You know what I thought my life would be at 62? Quiet, small, the shop, routine, TV dinners, bed, alone but safe. Then you walked into my life." "I walked in with a mess," I said. "Betrayal, pain, furniture that needed to be extracted from a hostile environment." He nodded. "Yes, all of that. And also dignity, strength, honesty. You were fighting for something real, for your own worth. I fell in love with that. With you." I turned to look at her. "I fell in love with the person who saw me, not my bank account. I need to tell you something. When I changed my will, removing Daniel, I named you as a beneficiary. Arshabawan Mayran." She sat up. "Arthur, no. I can't accept. I don't want you to think I'm with you for." I placed my finger gently on her lips. "Stop. It's not about the money. It's about what you represent. You are the only person, besides my parents, who ever treated me as a human instead of a resource to be exploited. I want you to know you matter. You matter more to me than anyone in years." Her eyes filled with tears. "You matter to me too." We returned in late August. Life settled into new rhythms. I sold the remaining antiques through Ruth's shop, earning $45,000. I invested the $1. $74 million from the house sale into a diversified retirement portfolio with a financial advisor Mark recommended. I started volunteering at the Legal Aid Society, offering free consultations to elderly clients. One afternoon, an older woman sat across from me, worry lining her face. "My grandson keeps calling," she said. "He says I should put my house in his name for tax reasons, but something doesn't feel right." "Trust that feeling," I told her. "That's a common manipulation tactic. Your house is your security. Never sign it over unless you fully understand and truly want to." "But he's family. Family should protect you, not pressure you. Real family earns trust through respect, not manipulation." As she left, thanking me profusely, I felt something I didn't expect. Purpose. My pain transformed into protection for others. Ruth expanded Timeless Treasures, hired an assistant, increased inventory. We kept separate residences. We both valued our independence, but we spent 5 or 6 nights a week together. One evening in late August, we sat on my apartment balcony, stars emerging over the ocean, a comfortable silence between us. "Do you ever have regrets?" Ruth asked quietly. "About Daniel, how it all turned out." I was silent for a long time, watching the water. I regret that the son I raised, or thought I raised, disappeared somewhere along the way. I regret I didn't see what was happening sooner, but I don't regret protecting myself. I was a good father, too good. I let myself be taken advantage of. I corrected that, and for the first time in years, I sleep through the night. "That's not regret," she said. "That's wisdom. Maybe they're the same thing." I thought about the strange math of life. I had lost a son, but I had found myself. I lost a house, but I found a home. Not in walls, but in the woman sitting next to me. I lived 64 years thinking I knew what family meant. It turned out family isn't blood. Family is who respects you when it's inconvenient, who stands with you when it's hard, who sees you, not your resources. Valerie was somewhere in a modest neighborhood, in a rental apartment, probably still thinking of herself as a victim. Daniel was there too, finally growing up, possibly too late for our relationship, but hopefully not too late for himself. And I was here, on this balcony, holding the hand of a woman who treated me with dignity. I had won, not because I had destroyed someone's life, but because I had rebuilt mine. I smiled. Ruth smiled back. We didn't say it out loud, but we both knew. This was a real happy ending, not a fairy tale, a real one, where the hero chose himself, protected his dignity, set boundaries. He found love not through rescue or drama, but through mutual respect between two people who had survived betrayal and learned what truly mattered. The ocean moved in the darkness below. The stars wheeled above us. Ruth's hand warm in mine. Justice achieved, life rebuilt, peace earned. I had spent 30 years on the bench delivering verdicts. Now I had delivered one for myself. I deserved better. And I had made it happen. The rest was just living. And that, finally, was enough. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to William's Revenge Stories, and share your thoughts on this story in the comments. To hear the next story, click the box on the left. Thanks for watching.